In the Spring Festival factor, it is a slight decline compared with the same period of last year. The profit rate of the business revenue of the industrial enterprises was 4.79%. And preliminary data show that industrial enterprises improved their profits realization in March. Third, the service sector grew fast and the growth of main industries rebounded. In the first quarter, the tertiary industry progressed while maintaining stability. Specifically, the value added of leasing and business services grew by 8.3%, financial intermediation up by 7%, lodging and catering up by 6%, wholesale and retail trade up by 5.8%, all registering higher growth rates than the fourth quarter. Information transmission software and information technology services grew fast, up by 21.2% year-on-year. In the first quarter, the index of services production increased by 7.4%, 0.1 percentage point higher than the first 2 months, and 0.2 percentage point higher than that of the fourth quarter. In March, the index of services production was up by 7.6% year-on-year, 0.3 percentage point higher than that of the first 2 months. In the first 2 months, the business revenue of service enterprises above designated level increased by 0.9% year-on-year, 0.5 percentage point lower than that of last year. Fourth, market sales witnessed accelerated growth and the share of online retail sales increased. In the first quarter, the total retail sales reached 9.779 billion yuan, up by 8.3%, 0.1 percentage point higher than that of the first 2 months, or 1.5 percentage points lower than that of the same period last year. Analyzed by different areas, the retail sales in urban areas reached 8.3402 trillion yuan, up by 8.2%, and the retail sales in rural areas stand at 1.4388 trillion yuan, up by 9.2%. Grouped by consumption patterns, the income of catering industry was 1.0644 trillion yuan, up by 9.6%, and the retail sales of goods reached 8.7146 trillion yuan, up by 8.2%. The sales of upgraded consumer goods grew fast, specifically the sales of cosmetics, telecommunication equipment by large enterprises grew by 10.9% and 10% year-on-year respectively, 2.6 percentage points and 1.7 percentage points higher than that of retail sales, respectively. In March, the total retail sales of consumer goods went up by 8.7%, 0.5 percentage point higher than that of the first 2 months, or up by 0.91% month-on-month. In the first quarter, the online retail sales reached 2.2379 trillion yuan, a year-on-year increase of 15.3%, 1.7 percentage points higher than the first 2 months. The online retail sales of physical goods were 1.7772 trillion yuan, up by 21%, accounting for 18.2% of the total retail sales, 1.7 percentage point higher than that of the first 2 months. Fifth, the investment rebounded steadily and the investment in high-tech industries grew fast. In the first quarter, the investment in fixed assets was 10.1871 trillion yuan, up by 8.3%, 0.2 percentage points higher than that of the 2 months, or 1.2 percentage points lower year-on-year. Specifically, the private investment reached 6.1492 trillion yuan, up by 6.4%. The primary industry investment grew by 3%, the secondary industry up by 4.2%, among which the investment in manufacturing grew by 4.6%. The tertiary industry grew by 7.5%, among which the investment in infrastructure grew by 4.4%. The investment in high-tech manufacturing was up by 11%, 5.1 percentage points higher than the total investment. The investment in high-tech services was up by 19.3%, 13 percentage points higher. In March, the investment in fixed assets grew by 0.45% month-on-month. The total real estate development investment in the first quarter was 2,380 billion yuan, up by 11.8%. The floor space of commercial buildings sold reached 298.29 million square meters, down by 0.9% year-on-year, 2.7 percentage points lower than that of the first 2 months. The total sales of commercial buildings were 2,703.9 billion yuan, up by 5.6%, 2.8 percentage points higher than the first 2 months. 6. The growth of total value of trade accelerated and trade structure improved. 7. The consumer price rose mildly and producer prices for industrial products experienced modest growth. 8. The surveyed unemployment rate in urban areas dropped slightly and the number of rural migrant workers continued to increase. In the first quarter, the newly increased employed people in urban areas totaled 3.24 million. In March, the surveyed unemployment rate in urban areas was 5.2%. Specifically, the surveyed unemployment rate of people aged between 25 to 59 was 4.8%. The urban surveyed unemployment rate in 31 major cities was 5.1%, 0.1 percentage point higher than that of last month. In March, the employees of enterprise worked averagely 46 hours per week, increased by 1.1 hours over that in February. At the end of March, the number of rural migrant workers reached 176.51 million, up by 1.2%. 9. Residents' income grew steadily and the income growth of rural residents outpaced that of urban residents. In the first quarter, the nationwide per capita disposable income of residents registered a nominal growth of 8.7% year-on-year, or a real increase of 6.8% after deducting price factors. In terms of permanent residents, the per capita disposable income of urban households was 11,633,000 yuan, a real growth of 5.9%. The per capita disposable income of urban households was 2.53 times that of the rural households, 0.02 less than that of the same period last year. The median of the nationwide per capita disposable income was 7,185 yuan, 58 yuan, a nominal increase of 8.8%. 5th, the economic restructuring was advanced and transformation and upgrading made remarkable achievements. The national industrial capacity utilization rate reached 75.9%, the second highest since 2013. At the end of March, the floor space of commercial buildings for sale was 516.46 million square kilometers, down by 9.9% year-on-year. At the end of February, the asset liability ratio of industrial enterprises above designated size was 56.9%. down by 0.2 percentage point. In the first quarter, the investment in ecological protection and treatment of environmental pollution and that in railway transport went up by 43% and 11% respectively. Steady efforts were made to advance the 3 critical battles. At the end of February, the balance of local government debt stood at 19 trillion. 1.42 yuan, which was within the limit approved by the MPC. The work of poverty education progressed steadily. The work of pollution prevention and control continued to manifest effects. According to preliminary results, the share of consumption of clean energy, such as natural gas, hydropower, nuclear power, and wind power in total energy consumption was 1.5 percentage points higher than that of the same period last year. The energy consumption per unit GDP went down by 2.7% year-on-year. The economic structure continued to improve. In the first quarter, the value added of the tertiary industry accounted for 57.3% of total GDP, 0.6 percentage points higher than that of the same period last year, 18.7 percentage points higher than that of the secondary industry, contributing 61.3% to GDP growth, 24.4 percentage points higher than that of the secondary industry. Consumption continued to perform as the dominant driving force from demand side, with final consumption expenditure contributing 65.1% to GDP growth. Service consumption took up 47.7% percent of households' final consumption expenditure, 1.4 percentage points higher than last year. With the integrated development of the Eastern, Central, Western, and Northeastern region, achievements was made in the development of the Beijing-Tianjin-Hebei region, the accelerated implementation of close coordination along the Yangtze River Economic Belt, the integrated development of the Yangtze River Delta, the issue of the online development plan for the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area, and building of Hainan Pilot Free Trade Zone all improved. 11. Market expectation improved and the confidence in development was strengthened. In March, the manufacturing PMI was 50.5%, 1.3 percentage points higher than that of February. All 5 sub-indexes rebounded, among which the production index and the new orders index went up by 3.2 percentage points and 1 percentage point respectively. The production and operation expectation index was 56.8%, 0.6 percentage point higher than that of February. In March, the business activity index for non-manufacturing industry was 54.8%, 0.5 percentage point higher than last month. The business activity index for services was 53.6%, 0.1 percentage higher than last month. The new orders index for services stayed within expansionary range. The composite PMI output index showed a market rise. In March, the composite PMI output index was 54%, 1.6 percentage points higher than that of last month. The expansion of production and operation of enterprises accelerated in general. In the first quarter, the consumer confidence index was 124.6, 3.2 percentage points higher than that of the fourth quarter last year. Generally speaking, the national economy performed within an appropriate range in the first quarter, sustaining the momentum of steady progress. Positive elements are on the rise, which laid a solid foundation for steady and healthy growth for the whole year. But we also need to see that global economic growth and the trade has slowed down. Uncertainties still abound. There are still a lot of domestic structural tensions and problems. We face daunting challenge in reform and a lot of economic headwinds. Going forward, guided by the Xi Jinping thought on socialism with Chinese characteristics in the new era, we will act on the spirit of the Central Economic Work Conference and the Government Work Report, continue to seek steady progress, focus on supply-side structural reform, ensure victory in the 3 critical battles, promote steady growth, reform, structural adjustment, well-being of the people, prevent risks, ensure stability, ensure that implementation of policies so that the economic indicators will stay within a reasonable range. Now the floor would be open for questions.
The Chinese government has just released economic figures for the first quarter this year. GDP is slightly over 21 trillion yuan, a 6.4% growth. That's still within the range between 6 to 6.5%. expected by the government. And talking about industrial growth, total value added of major firms up 6.5%. And talking about that, propelled by high and new technology, it's 7.8%. And talking about consumption, service sectors saw robust growth, and retail sales of
performance is within a proper range. We use growth, employment, and prices, and as well as income to evaluate economic performance. First, the GDP growth was 6.4%. That is notably higher than market expectations. Some people said it would be 6.2 or 6.3%. So this was higher. And from employment, in the first 3 months, surveyed unemployment rate was around 5.1 to 5.3. Very stable. And in March, this rate actually declined by 0.1 percentage point. So, new jobs created were 2.54 million. up by 29.5%, so that was a good sign in employment market. For prices, the average growth was 1.8%, that is a mild growth, and the prices of industry products was up by 0.2%. That is also a modest growth. The CPI grew faster in the third month, that was 2.3%, and prices of industry products was also grown by 0.4%. So that indicates better balance in the demand and supply relationship in the market. With more supply and demand, it is reasonable to have a mild growth of the price. Average disposable income of Chinese citizens was grow by 6.8% in real terms. That was 0.2 percentage points higher than year on year. So that means our average disposable income grew faster than GDP growth. And the ratio between urban residents' disposable income and that of the rural residents has declined. So these indicators have shown a steady performance of our economy. That was hard-won result. And second is our economic structure has improved. Since the beginning of this year, we have made steady progress and concrete progress in supply-side structural reform. We continue to upgrade and transform our economy. We can look at this issue through different perspectives. First, industrial structure. Services industry continues to grow fast. Value added in the tertiary industry contributes to a higher share in the GDP growth compared to last year. And when we look at the manufacturing of equipment grew at a relatively fast pace. If we look at the the demand structure, consumption has become the primary driving force for growth. Consumption contributes more than 60% of growth, and consumption of service was 47.7%, and 1.4 percentage points higher than last year. That means the driving force of service consumption is gaining stronger momentum. And investment is rebounding. Investment in technological upgrading and social investment in weak link areas have maintained relatively fast growth. These are laying good foundation for strong growth in the future. And on trade, general trade grew by 1.3, grew faster by 1.3 percentage points year on year, and there was greater balance between different regions in terms of development. Eastern coastal regions have continued to spearhead growth in the country. Large industrial companies in eastern areas have seen faster growth, and they are giving more input to R&D. In central and western regions, growth in industrial investment was faster than other regions of the country. Although the investment in industry investment in northeastern China was slower than other regions, it has improved compared to its own. The Hong Kong, Macau, Guangdong, Greater Bay Area, and other large regional development plans have been implemented with concrete progress. The third point I want to make is notable improvement in market expectations. We know that since the beginning of last year, external environment was not very favorable for us. When we look at international statistics like international trade, world economic growth, were not very favorable. There were a decline in several major indicators. However, we have seen an improvement in domestic market confidence in the domestic market and its market entity expectations, particularly in the second half of last year. We have introduced a lot of measures to stabilize market expectation and ensure stability in various areas. These measures have encouraged our market entities. I've seen that manufacturing PMI grew by 1.3%, 1.3 percentage points compared to last year. We have also seen a growth in index of service production. In the latest IMF report, China was the only major economy which has seen a raise in its economic growth forecast. So generally speaking, the market has greater confidence in China's economic growth. What I'm trying to say is that we have seen rising uncertainties in the international market. China's policies and measures have been effective in stabilizing market expectation and confidence. So these are the three features I want to talk about. International trade and global growth are slowing down. We have seen more and more uncertainties. In the first quarter, China's growth was 6.4%. That was better than expectations. But if we compare to last year and the same period of last year, there is a decline. So in the future, we'll continue to follow the decisions made by the CPC Central Committee and the State Council to better put into place the decided measures to pursue high-quality growth of our economy. Next question.
Thank you. We noticed that the numbers are pretty good for March. What are the reasons for that? And we can see that the economic performance was as good as previous quarters. How would you assess the prospects of China's economy? Thank you for your question. Last month, when I was here for a press conference, at that time there were some concerns about the economic numbers because numbers are not very good in the first 2 months. But in March, the numbers have picked up. For example, there are some economic indicators who have increased. For example, industrial output was up by 8.5%. Investment and consumption have all improved. Our trade, especially exports, was up by 20%. So the improvements are better than expected. On the whole, there are several reasons for such improvements. First, the policies are paying off. Since last November or October, we have introduced some measures to steady economic growth. For example, we have introduced some measures to expand investment and consumer consumption. The government work report has also introduced some measures to cut fees and taxes, which are also paying off. And the China-US trade talks have also provided some positive signals. All of these factors taken together, have given a boost to the confidence of the business community. And the second reason is that market expectations and the confidence of the business community are improving. This can be shown through the improvements in the statistics. It is clear that market expectations are on the rise. And third, there are some Spring Festival factors, as we said, in the first 2 months. Because of the Spring Festival, some numbers may be a little bit down. In March, also because of the Spring Festival, the statistics would come back and rise up again. So when we deduct the Spring Festival factors, we would be able to see some improvement. If we look at the whole picture, if we look at the larger picture, then there are some declines in the numbers. But compared to the fourth quarter of last year, the numbers have actually picked up. In terms of industrial numbers, well, they have exceeded our expectation, but a deeper analysis showed that they are actually within our expectation. This is mainly because the government policies have given more incentives to the producers and the businesses. And second, the business market's expectations are also on the rise. And third, VAT rate has been lowered from 16% to 13% in order to have greater deductible taxes. The producers would increase their stockpile. This would lead to more production in the upstream industry. In February, the large enterprises industrial output was up by 5.3%. And in the first 2 months, the number was 6.1%. So if we look at the larger picture, then in the first quarter, the increase of 5.3% is a good progress. As for your second question, the sustainability of such economic performance, well, in terms of economic and industrial growth, some of the factors I mentioned are short-term and some are mid to long-term. In the long term, the fundamentals supporting industrial expansion are many. For example, since April the 1st, the policies of lowering VAT tax has been implemented. From May the 1st, the enterprises will need to contribute less to social security contributions. This would also help businesses expand production and investment. The second favorable factor is that the financial sector is playing a bigger role in supporting the real economy. We adopt a robust and appropriate monetary system and fiscal system, which is producing a good effect on the real economy. It is helping improving the business environment for the real economy. And third, on export, it grew by 20.2%, up by 21% from the previous 2 months. Well, going forward, export is still on track to grow further. Well, according to our statistics and analysis, and also based on the preliminary number in early April, we can see an upward trajectory in the growth of exports. And we can see a close link between industrial output and export growth. So we can see a lot of positive factors supporting steady growth in China. Having said that, there are still some external uncertainties, and the profits of large enterprises is growing more slowly. So with all these factors taken together, we believe there are conditions for the economy to continue to grow steadily. Next question.
Bloomberg. I have two questions. I want to use English.
The first question is, you talk about the pickup in consumption and how it's contributed to growth. How much of a factor is the property market in that pickup? And like we talked about, how sustainable is that? And the second is on car sales, which have dipped, and car subsidies will be cut back in the second quarter. If the car market doesn't pick up, will the government consider more assistance?
Thank you for your question. Very good questions.
请翻译一下。
彭博社的记者，您刚才提到了消费的增长对经济增长的提速带来的贡献，同时，那么资产市场在。In the first quarter, the troika of drivers, the consumption, investment, and the trade and export have seen good growth. The trade in service and the trade in good have led to a bigger surplus in China's trade. But however, there are rises and decline in the troika. Consumption's contribution to growth in the first quarter was 65.1%. In the first quarter last year, trade was a negative contributor to growth. There was minus 17.9% last year. In the first quarter this year, the trade surplus increased by more than 70%. That was a huge pull up. And trade has contributed to 22.5% of growth. And also, investment played its role. Capital contributed to 12.1% of growth. That was down by 28.3 percentage points. So there is a difference in the contribution of the troika. So consumption continues to be the main driving force of growth. And the contribution of the troika may vary in different quarters. Based on previous year's numbers, we believe the contribution of consumption would remain around 60%, and in some years it would be above 70%. In recent years, this figure has constantly been above 60%. That means the role of consumption is consolidating. But we have to keep in mind that the potential in consumption has not been fully tapped. We still need to improve some systems and regulations to protect and boost consumption. as we can see in some recent hotspot issues. I think there is still potential for us to tap in unleashing unleashing household consumption. And regarding your second question about the decline in car sales, the production and sales of automobiles have slowed down to some extent. For China, I would say that in the last more than 10 years, China's automobile industry saw rapid growth. And now China's households have obtained more and more automobiles. So maybe we're in a short period of adjustment. If we look at other large markets in the world, there are declines or growth in the automobile industry in different countries. In the third month, although car sales declined, but it declined at a slower pace. And value added in the automotive industry was actually in the positive range. So personally speaking, I believe after a period of adjustment, the sales and the revenue of the automobile industry will decline at an even slower pace, and after this period, it will rebound. And third, I want to say that when you look at China's automobile industry, you should not only look at the new cars. Each year, more than 28 million new cars were sold. You should also look at the second-hand cars industry market. It is also growing very fast. Last year, it was nearly 14 million cars. That is nearly half of the new car market. In the first quarter, the total sales of this second-hand car was growing. So I would recommend you to look at both markets and do not neglect the second-hand car market because it is very vibrant. Next question.
With CCTV, we know it's been a year since China and the US are embroiled in trade frictions. What kind of impact has such trade frictions had on the economic performance in the first quarter? Thank you for your question. Let me respond in this way. We know that since the second half of 2018, after 7 to 8 years of in-depth adjustments, the world economy are showing signs of recovery. In 2018, the recovery momentum is quite strong, but after 2018, the recovery momentum is slowing down. And we later see a slowdown in global growth and global investment. An important reason is that in 2018, global trade protectionism has reared its ugly head. This means that trade protectionism is not good for global growth or global trade. Second, you asked about China-US trade frictions. In fact, our two sides have held 9 rounds of trade talks, which are producing good signals. All of these indicate to real progress in the trade talks. We can see that every time when we receive good signals from the trade talks, the international capital market and the multinational businesses would respond positively, and the market would respond positively. This means that China and the US, as the largest two economies in the world, if they can have greater trade cooperation and interactions, it would be good not just for the two countries, but also for global growth and recovery of global trade. Next question. With Beijing Business News, judging from the real estate statistics in March, we can see that more cities are witnessing growth in their new housing sales and second housing sales. They are growing faster than last year. What are the trends in the real estate market? How will that contribute to China's growth? So your first question is about real estate price, and the second is about real estate investment. Judging from the real estate statistics in 70 major cities in China, we can see that the year-on-year increase is quite mild or even slowed a little bit. The trend is the same in the second-hand real estate market. So on the whole, the housing prices across China are stable despite some rises in certain areas. But on the whole, the housing market is quite stable. Having said that, because of the lack of balance across different regions in China, we can also see a differentiation of the housing prices. Second, on housing investment. Actually, since last year, the housing investment has stayed at a good level of roughly 10%. In the first quarter, investment in real estate has risen quite rapidly because first, the housing prices are quite stable, and second, the new construction space for new houses have increased. Just now you asked what does growth in real estate investment mean, and I believe that such steady housing prices and the growth in construction space of new houses, it would help ease the pressure of the housing prices in some places and contribute to better balance in the market. If you look at the entire housing market in China, the expectations are quite stable because the market definition of the housing is quite stable because houses are for people to live in, not for speculation. Be it the inelastic demand or new demands generated by urbanization, the housing are always based on the needs for consumption. So we need to contain speculation, and there are conditions for supporting real estate market. Second, we will bring in speculative housing investment. So we need to strengthen the capability of local authorities to manage the housing market. So on the whole, the expectations for the housing market is quite stable. The land prices are also quite stable. So the market is generally stable. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Thank you. China News Service. Let's see. Compared to the fourth quarter of last year, the first quarter growth rate was very flat. Some people are very skeptical that China's growth statistics have been very stable, while there are fluctuations in other countries' numbers. What is your response? Regarding your question, we have heard voices in this regard from different sources, and my response would be that China's growth has shifted from a period of rapid growth to a period of high-quality growth. We have experienced a period of gear shifting. That is why China's growth is moderating. But that also means stability of China's growth is increasing. It doesn't mean that we are using these numbers to flatten the fluctuations in China's economy. If we look at the total GDP, the total size of China's economy in 2018 was more than 90 trillion yuan. With a large base number, that means our growth rate would moderate. But at the same time, that means there is unlikely to be large fluctuations in our growth rate. But there is also an issue. With a huge base number, 1% growth, 1 percentage point in the growth would make a huge difference. Since 2012, the tertiary industry's value added has become the largest contributor to growth in China, and its share is continuously increasing. Tertiary industry has become the largest contributor to China's economic growth. Consumption is increasingly becoming a strong driver of growth, and that is mainly in the tertiary industry. Consumption and tertiary industry are growing fast, and these two factors have one feature, that is stability. The stronger role of two stable factors means greater stability in China's economic growth. If we look at the political perspective, the central leadership and the State Council have continued to use new measures of macro regulation to implement effective targeted regulation to respond to turbulences in the external environment and resist the downward pressure on our economy, thus achieve the stable economic growth. When you look at European countries, the United States, and other developed countries like Japan, when they release their growth numbers, they use the Q-on-Q seasonally adjusted annualized rate, and then they give the year-on-year rate. When you compare the second quarter to the first quarter, and you adjust, and after adjusting the seasonal factors, they get the Q-on-Q seasonally adjusted annualized rate. And they assume that the growth rate in the next 3 quarters would be the same with this quarter. But if this quarter has a growth rate in the negative area, that means the next 3 quarters in this measurement would also be in the negative measure. So that is a matter of statistical measurement. Actually, when you look at the year-on-year numbers of large economies like the United States, the figures are stable. In 2018, China's figure was highest in the first quarter and lowest in the fourth quarter. So the difference was 0.4 percentage points. For the United States, the highest rate was 3%, and the lowest rate was 2.6%. So the difference was also 0.4 percentage points. So that is stable. When you use Q-on-Q seasonally adjusted annualized rate, that picture would look a little bit different. Because in this measurement, the difference in the United States GDP growth in last year, the highest point to the lowest point, the difference was 2 percentage points. So it would look a little bit unstable when you look at the Q-on-Q seasonally adjusted annualized rate, but if you look at the year-on-year rate, it is quite stable. When the Statistics Bureau issue our quarterly numbers, we have also released the month-on-month and the Q-on-Q numbers. If you're interested, you can also use the seasonally adjusted Q-on-Q number to analyze China's GDP growth. So what I'm trying to say is that seasonally adjusted Q-on-Q numbers would show more fluctuation in the numbers. Stable growth in China's GDP now is in line with facts and reality. We are not trying to use our non-statistical work to flatten the fluctuation in economic growth. Last question.
You mentioned that the economic indicators are better in the first quarter than expected, and the policies are paying off. Then do you expect a moderation of the policies to stabilize economic growth? On these specific statistics, you can refer to our staff. You can check with them. Well, I understand what you are asking about. In the first quarter, the economic performance was quite stable and better than expected. Well, going forward, we believe the positive factors for economic growth are on the rise. Market expectations are improving. And a lot of policies in the next few months will continue to be implemented and pay off. So the fundamentals for economic growth will be cemented. But I also mentioned that we still face downward economic pressure. There are still a lot of external uncertainties. Global growth and global trade growth are also slowing down, which would bring pressure to China's economy. And domestically, we also have some structural issues. The 6.4% is still lower than last year, year-on-year, and than the last quarter of last year. So we still face many other problems domestically. But most importantly, we already rolled out a number of policies, and what is really important is that the departments and local authorities need to implement in letter and spirit the policies made by the State Council and the central authorities so as to facilitate steady and healthy growth and high-quality growth of the Chinese economy. Thank you, Mr. Mao, and thank you all for coming.
特别是实体经济，它还面临着一些成本上升啊、盈利能力下降啊等等的一些矛盾和困难，所以至于你说的这个政策，我觉得最主要的，我们现在出台的政策已经比较多了。